form more associated with churches than stained glass windows. For much of the church's history, the scenes depicted in stained glass windows were virtually the only Bible people knew. When you can't read or don't have access to books, windows became the storytellers of faith. And just as important, stained glass windows were an expression of beauty and splendor, showing forth God's own glory. When I first joined Gloria Dei some 22 years ago, the love many in the congregation had for the stained glass windows in the sanctuary was palpable. The two large side windows depicted Mary, in this large window, holding the baby Jesus and a lamb, and Jesus praying in the Garden of Gethsemane in that window. The other windows were filled with many symbols of faith: a Trinitarian triangle, Noah's Ark, a cross and crown, an open Bible, symbols with a long history in the life of the Christian faith. The large window behind me was originally in the narthex of the church, a very small narthex, and because the balcony was here, you couldn't ever see the whole window. But what you could see at the base of the window was a portrait of Martin Luther. It is eerily, I don't know what. The fire, February 18th, is the commemoration day of Martin Luther. That's the day the church observes, that's the day of Luther's death, and the church observes that day in commemoration of him. But just because Luther died didn't mean Gloria Dei was going to. It did mean, however, that we had to rethink windows. All the large windows in the church were filled with decorative elements in rich and somewhat dark colors. But my most vivid memory of the days before the fire was sitting in the sanctuary for evening worship services, bathed in a golden light that came through the amber shades of glass. Now, there was no question but what we would commission new windows. Some of the windows were shattered, some of the original windows, in order to put out the fire. Some had sections that survived. The then narthex window actually survived pretty much intact, but it had already been starting to settle and was going to need, no matter fire or not, was going to need some reinforcement. But once we made the decision to turn the church sanctuary around, we knew that window couldn't stay, because Martin Luther would turn in his grave at being over the altar of his church. We knew we wanted new windows, but what would we want depicted in those windows? One thing was clear: even though one of the companies we worked with had the original patterns for the original windows, we could not recreate them and have them look anything close to what they were in the past. We could, however, work to create windows for the 21st century. We established a small window committee that selected artists and engaged in a long dialogue with the designers. The side windows were designed by a young artist named Colleen Drew from Milwaukee, who does primary design work with a company in the Twin Cities called Gay T. Palmer, which is a descendant of the company that built the original windows. That's why they still had the pattern. The altar window was designed and crafted by another Twin Cities stained glass artist named Phil Daniel. As we engaged in this dialogue, our ideas were mostly expressed in words, descriptive words about Gloria Dei and what we wanted Gloria Dei to be and represent in the community. One of the committee, an art teacher, was also able to draw some ideas, which the artists probably appreciated. We knew we wanted creation, especially Lake Superior, to be reflected in our windows. And especially because now, with a new narthex, we could actually see Lake Superior and bring it into our space. Not only the blue colors of the lake, but as you look at the windows, there is a horizon line that goes through all the windows, including the altar window where it's the lowest horizontal piece, and then all the way through the other windows. That represented for us the horizon of the lake. We knew that the butterfly was a traditional symbol of the resurrection, but it had to be a monarch because we had become a monarch way station. And when you look at that window, you see not only the monarch butterfly, but the caterpillar and the chrysalid and milkweed, the food of butterflies. Creation in the form of trees, sun, moon, stars, grapes, water, wheat. We did want biblical scenes in the two large windows, but we wanted them to reflect certain values. So the feeding of the 5,000, or it could be considered Jesus feeding the disciples after his resurrection, reflects our passion for feeding our neighbors with a monthly neighborhood breakfast and regular food shelf contributions. We wanted diversity in skin tone, gender, and physical ability or disability. And we wanted the road to Emmaus to be a symbol of Jesus accompanying his disciples and us into the city, with its diversity represented in the mix of ancient and modern cityscapes. We honored our heritage with a window we call the faith window in the back corner there, which includes a depiction of the steamer Norman, the ship that carried the Swedish founders of Gloria Dei to Duluth, along with the Norwegian founders of First Lutheran. We honored a more recent focus on service and justice with a window that's on the other side of this emergency exit and is only fully visible from outside the building, which is maybe appropriate since it's a window about service. And it depicts a globe, our connection with ministry partners in India, Honduras, Russia, and Tanzania, and a spiraling rainbow, our connection with ministry partners in the LGBTQ community. The biggest challenge was the altar window. Once the sanctuary was cleared out, we realized how big that window is. We knew that window could be the strongest connection with our central Hillside neighborhood. We wanted to continue the sense of the lake in the blue colors and the horizon line, but most of all, we wanted a sense of transparency, to be seen by our neighbors and for us to see them. We wanted a cross. In the words of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, we are called to see our neighbors, others for whom Christ died through the cross of Christ. And so it's been a delight to be aware of traffic, to see birds sometimes flying, to have a sense of not being a fortress or a sanctuary separated from the world and hunkered in, but to be a living, active, moving community of faith, moving as much as the movement of the lines in the glass, declaring that by God's grace, we're here for good.